that was my play. I'm in the mafia, and I don't join your prison gangs. And I got left alone. I got blessed. I got lucky. For some reason, my hustle was strong enough, and I just wasn't important enough that anybody made me do anything else. My name's Steve. I'm an alcoholic. I qualify as an alcoholic every time I say my name because kind of what defines me now. And I'm actually proud to say I'm an alcoholic, and I'll get to that later on. Let me go back and start from my childhood, and I'll try to make it as brief as possible so that you understand that I grew up in a loving, caring household. My mom and dad were fantastic parents. I come to find that out later. I had a lot of resentment when I was younger and realized that they weren't very merited. So I had no trauma in my life, so to say. The biggest issue I had is that I loved food, and I think food was my first addiction. When I was 11 years old, I weighed 300 pounds. And it's funny because it didn't stop me from playing sports. It didn't stop me from being active. It didn't stop me from being amongst my peers and my friends. What it did block me from being able to do is have that girl that I wanted in high school, because the weight seemed to be a problem for the women at that time in my life, or the ones that I was going after in my life, or trying to be with, or whatever the case may be. And I'll explain how that all changed as I got older. And yeah, growing up, I grew up in the San Fernando Valley in Woodland Hills. I went to a great elementary school. We used to play football on the lawn of the elementary school. I went to a great junior high and high school. I was a good athlete. I always got picked for the team. I could hit the ball as far as anybody, throw the ball as far as anybody. And I think I had to hit home runs all the time when I was playing baseball because I was so big, the ball would have to go over the fence for me to get around the bases in time. I can laugh about it now. But yeah, that was about the most trauma that I think I went through, and it really wasn't that traumatic. Looking back on it, it was just part of life. I don't think that made me an alcoholic. I don't think that made me a drug addict. I think, my personal opinion, and I work in the treatment world, my personal opinion is that I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict because I like the effects produced by alcohol, and I like the effects produced by narcotics. And I had to learn that it was between me and God, and that came later. So as a kid growing up, typical stuff. I rode horses. We lived in a walnut orchard area of Woodland Hills out in the San Fernando Valley. And I'll never forget when I started smoking cigarettes. The first cigarette I had, I was 10 years old. I was on the back of my Palomino horse, and somebody handed me a Camel non-filter, and I took that long drag off that cigarette, the first one, and man, I got so dizzy. I felt like I was going to fall off the horse, and I just said, oh my God, I like that feeling, and wanted to buy a pack the next day. So that's my addictive personality. Anything that I liked that made me feel differently, made me feel euphoric, made me feel, maybe not part of this world at that time. I loved it. It was just an amazing, amazing thing. And it progressed. Bunch of us used to gather and go to this guy by the name of Mr. Gray was his name. We'd go to his house and we'd give him our money on Friday afternoon, and Friday about 5 o'clock he'd come back with a trunk load full of Bacardi 151 or Southern Comfort or beer or whatever we asked him to get. He would go and get all this liquor for us underage kids, and he'd give it to us. And I think it was because he liked a couple of the girls we were hanging out with. He was a weirdo. And we would get that bottle, and we would walk from my friend's house to the high school, which was about a mile away. And while we were walking, we would be drinking, and everybody kind of noticed, and I didn't really pay much attention to it myself, but everybody kind of noticed that the 151 Bacardi, I would take a shot and I wouldn't chase it with the Coca-Cola like everybody else would. And it was kind of weird. I thought that was normal, and everybody else thought I was like a hero. So of course, I got that attention. I did it more. First time I was ever drunk, I remember my dad took me fishing when I was 11 years old, and he wanted to prove to me that drinking and smoking was a bad thing. You know, back in the day, that's the way parents did it. Today, they would call that child abuse. I don't think that that's what he was trying to do, but he was trying to teach me a lesson. So he took me fishing at a place called Lake Casitas, and we were in a little motorboat, and I was fishing, and I tossed out the line, and I got the line wrapped around the motor, but we were just sitting there, and he brought out this bottle of Old Overholt rye whiskey. I'll never forget the label. I can see it today. And he handed it to me after he took a swig, and he asked me, "Do you want some?" And I said, "Sure." And I took a sip of that, and it burned my throat. Went down, he pulled out a cigar, and he lit a cigar, and he goes, "You want one?" And I said, "Yeah." And he gave it to me. Granted, I'm 11 years old, and I'm smoking this cigar, and I'm drinking this whiskey. And then, of course, you can tell what the next thing was I was doing over the side of the boat. And I remember getting drunk and getting sick and not waking up the next day and going, "Oh, I can't wait to do that again." Like you hear a lot of people talk about, you know, when they share about their, you know, their alcoholism. But I do remember that I woke up and I didn't say to myself, "Man, I never want to do that again." So that was a slight indication at that time that there was a lot of different things to come. Fast forward, high school, like I said, we used to do a lot of drinking. We go to parties after the football games, and you know, we would hang out, and I would always like be the funny guy. The girls, "Oh, you're so funny. I really like you," and you know, I would try to be a part of that, and they're like, "Oh, I just want to be friends," you know, and so that kind of pissed me off growing up. Then I was at a friend's house. I'll never forget this day. Let me backtrack for a second. So my family, outside of my dad and my mom, my grandfather used to own a casino in Las Vegas. My uncle, Tony, was pretty well connected with some people back in the day. And I always wanted to be a gangster. I grew up, I didn't want to be the president of the United States. I didn't want to be a doctor or a lawyer. I wanted to be Al Capone, is who I wanted to be. You know, I would fight long and hard to try to become that. The only problem is that I didn't want to hurt anybody. I was a kind person, and I didn't want to hurt anybody. So it's hard to be a gangster and not be a gangster. You know, so as I said, I went through high school, and I believe I was 17 years old, and I got invited to a friend's party. And we were at his party, and he was in his room with a couple of buddies and a bunch of girls. And he had this big mirror, and he had this big pile of white substance on it. And I knew it was cocaine because my dad was in the nightclub business, and my dad used to tell me all the time, "Stay away from this drug. This drug is the worst, and you never want to participate in this drug." And I said, "I'll never do drugs," and blah, blah, blah. So I'm sitting in this circle, and they passed this mirror around, and it came to me, and I looked at it. It had gone from me to somebody else, and I passed it off to somebody else. And the guy's girlfriend went to take a line, and when she went down to take a line off the mirror, she blew the cocaine all over the place. And I'll never forget this. He reached up and he smacked her as hard as he could, And I looked at him and I said, wow, that's a gangster right there. And it's like, I want to be just like that. Now, granted, I've never hit a woman in my life to this day. But I said, I want to be just like that. I want to have that power and that control. And if that white substance brings that kind of power and that kind of control, then I have to be a part of this. So I brought the mirror back, scraped some up that had been blown all over the place. And I did a line. And I'll never forget, I drank a ton that night and didn't feel drunk. And one thing I noticed is that I wasn't thinking about food. And I'm like, okay, well, this is different. Let's see what this is about. So this was during disco, if anybody out there remembers disco. And we would get our Angel Flight pants and our members only jackets, and we would wear our little gold chain, John Travolta style, and we would go to the discotheque, and I would buy like a 1/4 gram of blow, and I'd have it in my little brown bottle, and I'd have my little Coke spoon around my neck, and 1/4 gram would last me the whole week. And then it progressed, and it would be a 1/2 gram, and then it was a gram, and now I'm down about 100 pounds, and now it's an 8-ball, and the progression and it was working. It was working. It was doing exactly what I wanted it to do. It got me to where I was in control. I had power. People wanted to be around me. I always had the bag. I was a hustler. I was a salesman. I was born to do this. Wasn't selling drugs, but I just knew how to manipulate that alcoholism, that drug addiction mentality was there from the minute I started drinking and the minute I started using, and that nice kid went out the window as far as being at the forefront of what I was doing. It was there, it was underneath, it was still there. I still didn't want to hurt anybody, but I wanted to be in charge. So I thought I had arrived. I thought I had become that quote unquote Al Capone character. But again, I couldn't beat anybody up, didn't want to hurt anybody, didn't want to, do any damage to anybody. And I just did drugs, man. I just loved the effects produced by narcotics. And then it got to the point where I got into the nightclub business, and I was working for a couple of guys that were pimps and drug dealers, and we had this little club in the San Fernando Valley, and I worked the front door. And one night I went to score some blow for one of the owners, and actually dropped the vial of cocaine on the ground, and it broke, but the pile was sitting there in this parking lot in this gravel, and I scooped it up so that I could take it back and prove to him that I wasn't trying to beat him out of the money he had given me. And I said, I apologize, just drove, it broke, long story short, and I went to toss it, and he said, no, stop. And I said, what? You can't snort this. He goes, no, give it to me. And he dumped it in this little clear vial. And he added water to it and some baking soda to it and put some fire to it. And the next thing you know, with gravel and everything in it, came out this big white rock. And he pulled out this glass pipe out of his drawer at the nightclub, and he said, here, this is freebase, try this. And I think I spent $2,500 that week after that night, just chasing that very first time. And for the next 40 years, I chased that hit. I chased that first hit I ever took. And that was the downfall. That's when it all started to spiral out of control. Homelessness, drug rehabs, outpatient programs, trying to get it, being introduced to AA, being introduced to NA, in and out. It just really took a hold of me. Lost everything. I was working at a car dealership, and the guy that owned the car dealership, his son and I were best friends, and he wanted to train me to run the car dealership. I was working there during the day and running the nightclub at night, and so he was teaching me all facets of the car dealership as he sent his son away to high school to college. So his son learned the college side, I learned the hands-on side, and the whole time I was drinking and using, and his son came back and I got him strung out on crack, and we did some pretty bad shit. Yeah, I ruined his life for a long time, to the point of where I was told by the father that I was no longer a part of the idea or the plan moving forward, and that I needed to stay away. And I did. Thank God we rekindled our friendship a while back, and we're still very close today, but it was some bad times. Anyway, the loss of things, my mom and dad ended up divorcing. My dad met another woman, and they've now been married almost 45 years. And my life just spiraled out of control. In and out of drug rehabs, in and out of jail, for short stints. I would get busted, just doing stupid crap and go to jail for a minute, just for a second, like overnight. And then I got sober and got introduced to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and man, my drinking and using was never the same after that. I had a head full of AA and a body full of booze and drugs, and it just didn't work. But I just couldn't stop. And I never realized until I got sober this last time, almost 7 years ago, I never realized that what was missing was that spiritual connection, was that God, that power greater than myself. It wasn't until I got sober this time that I realized that that's what was missing in my life. Thank you, Jesus. I'm glad I did. But so what ended up happening, to kind of wrap it up, what ended up happening with me is I was really, really messed up, and it was 1994, and I had already had one daughter with my first wife, and we were trying to raise her together, and I was an apartment manager, and I would, and I've never told this story at the public level, so this is new for me, so bear with me on this. I would go to work, and I would earn a paycheck. I would work all week, and my wife at the time, my ex-wife, my wife at the time, the mother of my first child, she was a drug addict also, and so I would go to work and I would get paid, and I was this apartment manager as well, and I'd come home and we'd go to grocery shopping trying to do the right thing. We'd buy the baby's diapers, we'd get the formula, we'd get everything we need for my daughter, and have a little bit of money left over, and we would call the connection, and we would go and we would score. And long story short, I know you guys know what's coming. By the end of the night, I was back at the store returning the diapers, getting my money back, returning the baby formula, getting my money back, and using that money to go out and buy more drugs, and at all costs. And I started robbing, doing little boosting type robberies. Never had a gun. Like I said, what a gangster. I wanted to be Al Capone with my finger. So I went and robbed this bakery. And I had done a couple of other little robberies. I robbed a Del Taco. And then I robbed this bakery, and they never pressed charges on any of them until the third robbery I did. I robbed a Food for Less. I walked in, it wasn't actually a robbery, I was boosting liquor. My connection told me it was on New Year's Eve of 1994. He said, bring me 3 bottles of whiskey, certain kind of whiskey, tequila and stuff. And he says, and I'll give you an 8-ball. And I was homeless and living from place to place and staying in abandoned apartments and so forth and so on. So I said, great. So I walked into a Food for Less, and I was weighing about $140, 140 now, down from 300 when I was 11. And my pants were too big, so 3 bottles of whiskey fit in there perfectly. And I put the 3 bottles in my pants and started to walk out of the store. And somebody grabbed me from behind, and I pulled away from them, and they got their finger caught in my jacket, and they broke their finger. Cops came, arrested me. They called it what's called an Estes robbery. And they brought up my 2 previous robberies that the charges had been dropped, and they refiled. And for a total of like $37, I was facing 25 to life in a penitentiary with my 3rd strike. Never having been to prison before, just having been to jail. I just, I couldn't believe it. So I was sitting in jail, and I called my dad, and I said, hey, listen, you know, I'm looking at 25 to life in the penitentiary. My bail's $550,000 for 3 bottles of whiskey. And my dad says, let me know where you end up. I'm sorry to hear that, and can't do anything for you. And it was the first rude awakening that I ever had, because he had always been there, put me into the rehabs before and helped me before, but at this point, he wasn't going to risk his home. So I went, and I fought the case. He helped me with a lawyer. The paid lawyer ended up getting me the same sentence that the public defender was going to get me. I ended up pleading guilty and receiving 2 strikes. They dropped the strike, and I ended up getting 9 years flat with 80%. And I did that time. I went into prison in August of '95, having been in county jail that whole time from January 1st, or from December 31st of '94. Finally caught my sentence of the 9 years, and they sent me off. And they sent me to reception, then they sent me to a brand new place called High Desert State Prison, which had not been opened yet. I was the 2nd bus on the yard at High Desert State Prison. Had never been in the penitentiary before. Didn't run with anybody in particular. I'm Italian. I didn't run with the whites. I didn't run with the Mexicans. I didn't run with the blacks. I just was by myself. And when I got to prison, very political, and I'm a smart guy. I'm a hustler, and I found a way to hustle myself into not having to get involved in any of the prison crap. I'm Italian. Everybody thought I was a gangster. I let them think that. Everybody left me alone. They thought I was part of the mafia. I let them think that. But I also let them understand that, I had 2 kids out there now. I found out I had had a 2nd daughter with this woman, and that she was in a foster care because her mother was in prison. Really great women I ended up picking, right? Anyway, and came to the point of where I would say to anybody that wanted me to quote unquote join their prison gang, I'd say, what's the very worst offense that somebody could come in here for? And the answer was always child abuse. And I said, well, if I have 2 kids out there on the streets that need a dad, and I join your prison gang and catch any more time and get in trouble, isn't that abusing my children? And they would go, huh? And they would walk away and leave me alone. And that was my play. I'm in the mafia, and I don't join your prison gangs. And I got left alone. I got blessed. I got lucky. For some reason, my hustle was strong enough, and I just wasn't important enough that anybody made me do anything else. I did a total of 7 years and 1 month, and I stayed sober. I got sober on May 1st, 1995. I got loaded one time in the joint, or in the county jail, and I'd snorted a little bit of heroin that somebody had brought in, And so on May 1st, 1995, I got sober. I decided to implement the steps in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I worked the steps through the mail once I went to prison with my buddy who was my Eskimo, as I said, back in 1982, first time I went to a meeting. And I paroled in January of 2002, and I'd like to tell you the God's honest truth, I haven't been back since. I'm one of those rare things. I've never had a parole violation. I've never been back to the penitentiary. It's not to say I stayed sober. It's not to say that I shouldn't have gone back or that I didn't come close to going back, but I never went back. So I went through the whole process, stayed sober. Once I paroled, I went to work in the movie business and I started producing motion pictures. My buddy, my friend that I told you about, who was my Eskimo, his name is Rand. He's no longer with us, God rest his soul. We produced motion pictures, and I ended up producing 4 major motion pictures and producing some record albums, and became really successful. Stayed sober all the way till my 13th birthday of recovery. And the day after my 13th birthday of sobriety, I got loaded again. And I went out on a 10-year run. And I'll tell you, it was really hard because I had met somebody new. I was married to the woman that I'm married to today, coming up on 20 years in October. And, you know, she was in the program and she was sober, and I relapsed and she stayed sober. And for 10 years, it was a struggle. We both came in and out and went through the process for a long time. And, you know, I was still extremely successful in the movie business financially. Bought a big house in Northridge, did very well for myself. And, you know, had done some of the work that I needed to do in recovery. And ended up getting sober again in September of 2018. After 10 years, I had gone to work for a company that's in a position to go public, raising capital for them for their pre-IPO, a green steam products company called MedX. And I went to work for them and brought them a lot of money, and they're a great company. They've grown tremendously. But I felt like I wasn't doing enough. I just did not feel accomplished. I was sober again in September of 2018. I found a new sponsor. I went back through the program and worked the steps. I did them right. I found a God, as I said, Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. You know, and I give him thanks every single day for my recovery. So I said to my wife, I said, look, we're sitting here, we've made a lot of money, we've done well for ourselves, we're sober again. I want to go help people. I want to open a treatment center. She looked at me like I was crazy. And so she said, okay, whatever you want. So we sold our house, we packed up, we moved to the desert, no place to live, got an Airbnb, and started looking for a home to buy to build a treatment center. And we did. We bought a house, and with we had 2 partners, and we opened up this treatment center. And we didn't make it. It ended up being a pretty tough time for us financially. We lost a lot of money, but we stayed sober and we worked the program, and our lives, you know, were just blessed. This time we were just literally blessed because we did the work and we were giving back and we were trying to do the right thing. Instead of taking from this world for the first time in my life, I was trying to give something back. And I think that God saw that and said to me, you know what? I'm going to give you an opportunity to redeem yourself. I'm not going to bury you this time. I'm not going to wipe you out this time. I'm going to let you move forward because you're doing everything you're supposed to do. And I got through the whole process. I had no resentment. My wife had no resentment, and she went back to school and got a real estate license. We bought a home in Indio. where we live now on the golf course. Always wanted to live on the golf course. So we got up and we shook ourselves off and dusted ourselves off. And I got involved, thankfully, with a very dear friend of mine who I had met when I owned my own treatment center. And she is the CEO of this place. And I work now as the business development and outreach coordinator for Harlow Gardens Residential Treatment Center and Advanced Therapeutic Services in Rancho Mirage and in Palm Springs and in Barstow, California. And I do that with the biggest smile on my face. I love doing what I do. I'm still involved with my own recovery on a daily basis. I never regret anything in the past. I think that everything that's happened to me has been a learning experience. You know, the biggest thing I can leave you with is that, you know, it doesn't matter how many times they knock you down. What matters is how many times you get back up. And I've been knocked down a lot, and I don't blame the world for that. I don't blame my parents for that. I knocked myself down. I had full and total responsibility for everything that's gone on in my life. And it wasn't until I took that responsibility and realized that it was me that was the problem. It wasn't the drugs, it wasn't the alcohol. They were the solution to my problem. And my problem was me and the lack of a God of my understanding in my life. Once I realized that if I brought that into my life and I did what I was supposed to do, and here's the simplicity of what I do. And I got to tell you, you'll hear 1,000 people in my industry and in other industries, they will convolute it and they will warp your mind about it. And they will talk about the inner child and the trauma and the this. And I'm not saying that stuff's not real, so please don't get me wrong. If you trust God, if you clean house, and if you help another human being, whether they're a recovering human being or just another human being, I 100% guarantee you your life will get better. Mine has. My wife's has. I have far less than I've ever had financially, but I have far more than I've ever had spiritually and emotionally. I work for Harlow Gardens and ATS. I'm able to help other people realize their dreams of recovery. I'm able to be a part of a team that is second to none. We are a brand new facility. We're 41 beds. Nothing like this has come about since Betty Ford in the 1980s. And we're doing it the right way, and I get to be a part of that. I could have missed it. I literally could have missed it all. And God saw different. So my mission in life today is far different than it was when I was younger. I wanted to be a gangster when I was younger. I wanted to be Al Capone when I was younger. My mission in life today is to be the guy that's there if you need something. My mission today is to stay sober and to help another person achieve recovery, whether it be through drugs, alcohol, sexual abuse, gambling, whatever the case may be. I want to be the person that's there to help you achieve what I've achieved, and that's that peace of mind. And I say this, and I think people get a little bit put off by it sometimes. But I say, I no longer suffer from the disease of alcoholism. There's no suffering in my life. I have it. I will always have it. But I no longer suffer. I am no longer a victim of my circumstances. I have total control with the spiritual help of God, have total control and choices in my life today as to what I could do next. Until I pick up that first drink or that first drug, I have control. Once I pick up that first drink or that first drug, I have no control anymore. So I trust God, I clean house, I help others, and I try to do the right thing on a daily basis. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. But I'll tell you what, I'm way better than I was 30 years ago, 40 years ago when I first got introduced to this program. Alcoholics Anonymous saved my life. Narcotics Anonymous saved my life. God saved my life. And I can tell you this right now. If you're struggling with things, whatever they are, I've been there. And you can get to the other side. I did. And I know a lot of people who have. And I've redeemed myself. And I've become the human being, the man that I've always wanted to be. I wouldn't change a thing. Would not change a thing. And I'm just grateful that you guys took the time to listen to me. And I just want you to know that if you ever need any help and you run into me, just ask for it and I'm here for you. So thanks for listening to me and thanks for your time. Appreciate it.